Everybody, so as you've seen from the title, I will be reviewing let me get it down here where I can reach it, the Clear Lake Lures Popper. So this bait has yet to touch the water, as I do all my review videos without the bait actually ever touching water. I came over here to the shadier side so the sun won't be in my eyes or your guys's, because I know that causes some glare sometimes. So as you guys know, there is a 3-point rating system on this bait, or on any of the baits that I review. Basically, the rating system is bites. If I catch a fish, that is an extra 10 points for the bait. If I don't, then it'll be 0. If I catch a bluegill on the bait, then I don't really know. I'll probably just count it as 10 because bluegill are harder to find and harder to catch on bass lures. So if I catch a bluegill, it'll probably be the same as normal points. And then we have overall quality. As far as that goes, is paint, the paint job, the split rings, the hooks, and just the quality of the bait. It's all of itself. And then we have the action. So out of the 2 casts I've made with this bait, I can say that it doesn't have the greatest action in the world. It doesn't have the greatest action in the world. It doesn't like to walk very well. It's kind of hard to walk it. It does have a decent water push, I guess you would say. It pushes water pretty decently well. You cast it way out there, you give it some hard snaps, and it does pop pretty decent. Like I said, it doesn't like to walk, which is a bit of a problem because I like to walk the popper sometimes. Sometimes if you get it on the right rhythm, you can actually get it to walk for a little ways and then it'll stop. But you know, some baits are like that. Even some of the higher end, like the Strike King popper. I have a Strike King popper that's I think it was $9.94 or something like that. It was almost $10, and it doesn't walk very well either. I actually won this popper in a giveaway from Brian's Big Bass Adventures. So I have no clue how much this bait actually is. I will probably do some research and leave a link in the description if I do like it. So far I have not had any bites. I've only made, I think, 5 casts with it. No bites yet. As far as the paint goes, I'll show you guys the paint job. I do like the paint job. I think it'll be a really good paint job for bass fishing. I wish I had a crankbait in this color. I think it would be a really good crankbait color. But it's got a black back, a blue side, very bright chartreuse line, and a white silver belly with a bright chartreuse mouth. I like that chartreuse mouth because it will it'll look different to the fish in the muddier water instead of that red mouth that they're used to seeing on like the Rebel poppers, the Strike King poppers. It's a chartreuse mouth, which will give it a little bit of an added attractant to it, I think, in that muddier water. The popping action is pretty good on it. It's not the best, but it's not the worst either. In my opinion, the worst popper that I've ever used is the actual little Rebel popper. Not the original, but the little one. It's not got a very good popping action to it. Fish this around, see if anything happens. If you get it on a good rhythm, you can walk it pretty decently. It's definitely not the best walking style bait. It's very obvious that it's more made for like some of the hard snap type of popping baits, or popping fishing, you know, some of the hard snaps like that right there. It's made for more of that and not really made for walking. Which, that's alright, you know. If you get on a place where you can see the bass and they're just coming up and smoking the bait, you know, this here would be a great bait to throw. And it's obvious from the paint job that this is a shad profile bait. It's not a bluegill style profile. Or yeah, bluegill style color, that's what I meant. With that white belly, you know, it's more of a shad profile over bluegill. But I'm sure if you find where they're chewing on bluegill, I'm sure you could probably get a few bites with it. Just off of the reaction strike. Reaction alone, they'll come up and try to grab it, I'm sure. You know, if you're ever out there and you see some bass blowing up on shad back in the back of a creek or something, this would be a perfect bait to throw, especially if you have some shorter shad like threadfin shad. I know threadfin don't get as big as like hickory and gizzard. I know hickory and gizzard shad get to where they're like almost 12 inches long. This here would be a great one for like threadfin. I've heard threadfin only get to where they're like 6 inches long. You know, this here would be a perfect little shad imitator. Perfect size for even some of the smaller bass. And the bigger bass will come up and grab it as well. Biggest bass I've ever caught on a popper was close to 3.5 pounds. And it was a popper just like this one. I think, what brand was that? I don't believe it was Rebel, but I kind of think it was. Kind of thinking in the back of my head it was a Rebel popper. I used to have a popper, but I don't remember the brand. But it was a pretty decent popper. Ooh, I think a bluegill just swiped at it. Something did. And just like I was saying earlier, as far as fish go, if you catch one, then it's 10 points to the bait. But if you have a bass hit, because you'll obviously know the difference between a bluegill and a bass hit, it'll be a 1 point. Because they obviously didn't really try to eat it, because they would have gotten hooked if they tried to eat it. So overall, trying not to make this video too long, but overall my first impression of the bait is it's not got the greatest action in the world. As far as walking goes, the popping action is pretty decent. This here would be more of the style popper I would throw when they're schooling, because the best way to use it is with really hard snaps and make a lot of commotion. It's got rattles in it, which could help on some of those calmer days when they're just coming up and nailing shad. Like you guys can see how I'm working it there. That's about the best way to work this style popper. If you work it slowly, it just kind of glides in the water. It doesn't really pop that hard. But yeah, so as far as action goes, I'm going to give it a 6. Just because of the walking. I mean, if it walked good and popped decently well without having to really, you know, snap it hard, I would give it probably an 8. But since it's not very good at walking, and you kind of have to snap it a little bit harder to get it popped right, I would give it a 6. As far as the paint and the quality go, if you guys notice over like some of the painted poppers, this here has like a foil paint on it. It's not directly onto the actual plastic bait. It's actually got like a glued on foil to it. Over a time, that will start to break. I actually have a jerkbait that I got in a mystery tackle box a couple years ago, and I only caught one fish on it, and the paint has already started flaking off. And I literally only caught one like 12-inch long bass on it. It's not a very good paint, you know, the foil style paint. It's not very good. I would go with something like a normal painted straight onto the body, no foil or nothing like that. If I was going to buy one, I probably wouldn't buy another one of these, which I didn't buy this. I bought it, or I got it in a giveaway, like I said. But overall, it's a pretty decent popper. As far as quality goes, From 1 to 10, I would give it I'll give it a 7. Just because it's got good hooks. It looks like they got some pretty decent hooks on them. The split rings look like they could be better, but they look like they're good quality. You know, they don't look too super cheap. I like the feathered treble. Most companies that make poppers use feathered trebles, and I think that gives them a little bit of an edge on a popper or a bait that doesn't have feathered trebles. I think any bait that has feathered trebles works better. And I've found that poppers with feathered trebles actually catch more species as well, not just bass, but I've actually caught quite a few bluegill coming after that little tail, which is probably how I had that little bluegill come up there. So we had one little bluegill come up. I'll give it a 1 point for that. So overall, we have a 13 points on this bait. Didn't get any good bass blow-ups or hookups or anything like that, so I can't really tell you how good the hookup ratio is. So right now, my opinion on this bait is about at a 13 out of 30, because with the 3-point rating system going up to 10, you'd basically have to be the perfect bass bait to get a 30. But this one here, this Clear Lake Lures popper, gets a 13 out of 30 rating system. Thanks for watching. Bye.